Going to continue our session over here, and I'm very pleased to introduce Ramniklal, goes as Ram, Mistry from Verizon, and really he has come from Dallas just for this session actually. So thank you. And so Ram has been driving the commercialization of the data analytics solution and data monetization at Verizon, and it's most, as you know, in most organizations, it's very hard, and many teams, they, which understand data analytics, but there's very few really can monetize, and that's what Ram is doing. And he's going to talk about big data, IoT, and everything. As you know, big IoT is Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything is pretty much a very sexy word, but really monetization has not occurred. Like companies are not making money. He's going to talk about what his team is doing and what Verizon is doing in particular. So thank you, Ram. So and by the way, it's going to be as before. It's going to be an interactive session. So please feel free to ask me questions while this goes through.
Thank you. So, can we turn this on, or can you guys hear me? Great. So, all right. So, as he was alluding to, at Verizon, Verizon's a $135 billion revenue company, about 165,000 employees. Okay? So, can you guys take a guess at how many data scientists, data analysts, right, engineers that we have at Verizon? 2,000. 10. It's probably around the 10 mark. Okay. So we have probably over 1,000 data scientists and engineers. Okay. We have a huge technology IT team, right? Drives that, and then there's other data scientists and analysts that are embedded in other parts of the business, doing other functions, but they have those core capabilities. Okay. So let's just say 5,000 to 10,000 of these guys. Key question: how many dollars of revenue do you think they've generated over the last 3 years? You got $0 of revenues. Okay, so a business running right with an average salary of about 150K loaded for these guys for 2 years or 3 years, it's very expensive. So that's where I come in, and that's what my job is. My job is to figure out what data do we have, what are the capabilities or solutions that we can use data analytics for, and to monetize that, introduce that into the marketplace so we can get revenues for the company. Okay. So what size of revenues are we talking about? Okay, I said $135 billion is the revenue of Verizon. Okay, the external market is expecting about 10% growth for Verizon, 13 billion, let's just say. Google, Amazon, those guys are growing at 20 to 25%. Okay, so lower expectations for Verizon, understand that. Now, given that Verizon has a pretty mature business called wireline, which is on the decline state, wireless is capping out. Right? My estimates are you probably have to generate about 17 to $18 billion a year of growth just to meet those analysts' expectations. Okay. So, can we go after opportunities that generate $5, $10 million a year, which to a lot of companies would be huge? We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars worth of opportunities, or per solution, or per opportunity that we can put here. So that's what I got to figure out. Okay? And then, as you can imagine, that a company that big has thousands of projects that they've invested in, a lot of historical baggage, and lots of money invested in some of these things. And it becomes very, very hard to manage that in a very systematic, controlled way, so you can make the right decisions. So that's one of the things that we've done at Verizon, is that we've put together a structured approach that we're kind of driving into the organization to make sure we make the best decisions possible that we can to maximize those revenue opportunities. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of those things, right? Now, as you get into business, you'll hear a lot of guys, analytic guys, yeah, we can do this, we can build this with the infrastructure, we can buy this Oracle database and all that. Unless you can translate that into money, not important. Okay. All right, so just a little bit of the historical evolution of the IoT market. So we had the connectivity pre-2010, right, which was just, hey, we'll get you from, data from here to there, right, kind of thing. Then came partner solutions where, like in a Caterpillar example, as the previous speaker spoke about, it's taking the data set from the Caterpillar tractors, getting it into a back-end application, and Verizon would provide, the connectivity there. Then came the applications on the Verizon infrastructure. So we realized that, the situation is very, very complicated because there's a lot of different variables. It's very fragmented, right? And that's why the adoption of some of these technologies and solutions is not really sticky. So we need to create an end-to-end type of approach, and that's where Verizon came in with some of these vertical solutions. So in the energy industry, as an example, meter reading, okay? So electric meters, smart meters, and all that. So there'll be guys that are out there, they're saying, yeah, we can do meter reading. Yes, they can. They can take the data set, they get it to the backend application, and they can tell you how many kilowatt hours, your whole house of my house use. Now comes the next issue. Okay, well, in order to do this, right, and to run it as a business or operationalize this, I need security. How are you securing that communication from the end-to-end to make sure nobody tampers it? He doesn't come there, take the meter from my house and put it into his meter, right, or his house or whatever, okay? Issues with management of the software loads on those particular devices. The protocols, because they have different manufacturers of meters, right? How do you integrate all that stuff? Those were some of the challenges. So we introduced a solution that was end-to-end comprehensive. It's called Gridwide, that does exactly that. So now the utilities can just come to Verizon for X dollars per meter per month. They get the entire piece. Make it very, very easy. They don't have to hire a lot of people, and the operationalization becomes much more simpler, et cetera. Okay. And now what we're seeing is a trend, what we call cross-application enablement. So in that same example of the meter reading, is it possible to take the energy on-off state from the meter, from your cell phone that's charging inside the house, from that connected camera that you have that's plugged into the AC outlet, from the Fios box, right, that's running your cable television, get all that information and give the utility an assessment to say whether the power is really on or off at that house or that neighborhood. So that's where the cross-application enablement comes in. Now we're going to the next step beyond that, which is actually integrating workflows. So how do you go beyond that and say, okay, look, I understand the power is out at these particular neighborhoods. Now, having said that, this one is more critical than this one because there's a lot of elderly people here that rely on medication that has to be refrigerated. Power has to be up first there, or whatever. So we can actually prioritize that. So that's the direction of this whole IoT stuff. So, like I said, there's a lot of market barriers to entry. It's complicated, it's fragmented, right? You need a lot of domain expertise in certain areas. You need the coverage, the network coverage, the security, all of those other things. And that's what Verizon was actually bringing to the table. Make it very, very simple. Okay, so when we think about IoT, this is coming back to my point again, is that this is what we're really looking at. So how do you sense the data set? How do you get the sensor data? Okay. Now here, most people think, okay, well, yeah, hey, there's a set of sensors out there. I'm just going to get the data set in here, and then I'll manipulate the data set and do my analytics on top of that. Wrong. It doesn't work that way. There's different protocols. The data set is structured in different ways, right? It takes different things to get that data set out, the security issues and all that. So Verizon, when we integrate a device into our solution set, there's a whole big process that we go through to make sure that those devices are compliant to a lot of the factors that I mentioned. Okay. So you got to do that. You got to be able to transport the data. So the data can come to you from either the cellular network, the Wi-Fi network, some landline, communication network, come through satellite, whatever. Different, latencies. There's different issues and different protocols and all that. So how do you do that? Okay, so you got to make sure that whatever the transport mechanism addresses all of those things. The storage of the information set, the analytics. The control is the automation of control. So, as my boss told me just recently, he said, look, everybody's projecting somewhere about $20 billion by 2020. 20 billion IoT devices by 2020. He said, how do you think we're going to be able to control all those things? And I was just like, where are you going with this? He said, look, to control 20 billion devices using people it's going to be impossible to do that. You just will not be able to react that quick. Even 10 billion devices, very, very low chances, right, of being successful. So you have to be able to automate that stuff. Okay? And then when you start automating, then there's a whole bunch of other issues, right? Okay? Who has access to it? Security becomes very, very important with that, etc. And then the last part, which is the share, which is, if there are things that happen, how do you share that with the other employees or the candidates, the constituents that you have that need to have access to that information set. So we take a look at all of that stuff. Overall, the market for data analytics in the 5 segments that I'm showing there, it will get to about 23 billion by 2020. Okay. Now, people will say, okay, we want to get into data analytics, right, to make money at it. So what we're going to do is we're going to build it, and people will come, right? We can apply it to different industries and all that. Wrong. It doesn't work, right? I've seen probably 20 to 30 instances of where we have done that, and it has not worked. So if you put the time up front a little bit and understand the market, what you want to go after, where your core competencies are, how you can create a competitive advantage, how you can sustain that competitive advantage, then you can actually go and figure out how you're going to be successful. Okay, so lower your risk. So when we did this and identified those 5 verticals, there's a lot of work that went behind that. And we figured out, based on a certain set of criteria that we have, that those are the ones that we really want to go after. If they do have big problems, big money, big broad target market base, etc. Okay. So this comes back to that opening statement. So data analytics is absolutely useless by itself unless you can figure out how to operationalize it and how you can make money at it. So most organizations where they've actually taken data analytics and generated something of value or perceived value, I tell you, they all focus on the cost structure. I can help our team do this better, right? Respond to customers better, right? But nothing impacting the revenue side of the equation, which is a lot better, right? From a value proposition, sales to the internal organization. So that's what my team does, is we're trying to focus on those areas where we can bring that incremental revenue to Verizon by monetizing that data as data analytics. So one of the challenges you will have is that when you go back and your organization becomes very serious about this and says, yeah, we gotta make money off data and data analytics, you'll get tons of people coming to you with different solutions. Oh yeah, I got this, great idea, great idea, great idea. The problem is that some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them just don't make sense. Okay? So organizations spend a lot of time, we did, right? A lot of time and money, right, analyzing those different opportunities. We actually had a mechanism, a process in place where people could nominate their ideas, then it goes through a review process, and then it goes through a leadership team review, and then we might decide on a handful of these ones to invest in. Very, very expensive proposition. So what we did was we actually went back, and I stepped back and I said, okay, look, if I'm running this business, here are some of the key criteria that I need, and identify the parameters and what the associated value is. So as an example, revenue expectations, right? When you launch the product the first year, it should be $50 million or above in revenue expectations. Okay? 5 years should be over $250 million. Okay? And that's kind of like my guideline. So if you're above that, you get a check mark. Okay? If you launch something, it should leverage one of the existing platforms that we have already developed and deployed in the marketplace. Okay? That's another check mark. If we launch something, we should be in the leadership position or the number 2 position with a plan of getting to number 1. And it should be sustained in a competitive advantage when we create that, another check mark. So we have these parameters all identified. So as people come in with new ideas, we scrub it against that parameter set. And we say, hey, does this meet this? Have you thought about this? What is the target market? How are you going to get this product out into the marketplace? So we go through that, and I've specified some of these things here for you guys as well. So this framework actually really helps us quite a bit, because what it does is keeps our employees motivated, but it also challenges them to think from a business perspective. Hey, do I really want to do this? So once once we have done that, and the leadership team has bought off on that, what we tended to do was we go back to our data scientists and data analysts, right, and data teams, and tell them, hey, look, here's the situation. This is what we're going to do. And this is something like what they would come back with. Hey, yeah, we can do this because this infrastructure that we have, or we can build, can do all this stuff, right? You can do very fast queries, and all the stuff that you guys are hearing about. Okay. The problem is, even if we invest in this, it's not going to get to the endpoint because they haven't thought about it thoroughly. Okay, they're looking at it just from an architecture implementation perspective. So, as you start going broader into that, you'll get some organizations giving you this kind of this middle picture here, right? Which is where they're bringing in scale, flexibility, accuracy, latency, reliability, timelines, etc. Right? Okay. The problem is that's still not a complete picture, because as an example, if I get something and I deploy it out in the marketplace and the customer perceives that as a value, right, and I've got a price tag to it, if I can't bill for it, I'll be doing that. I can't collect on it. Right? If I can't check whether the guy has paid his bill or not before I'm allowing him access to the next set of data, useless. Right? If I can't support it, useless. So that's where some of the other parameters on the outside of that, the red ones, come into place. So you've got to take a look at all of those things, right? And we do this through a process called market opportunity assessment. We consider all of these variables and then decide on which are the initiatives that we want to take to our leadership team for review. Say, yeah, go for this or not go for this. So now I'm going to share with you some of the outputs of that methodology and the process that we've established. So this is Verizon Palomar. We have about 120 million cellular subscribers. You guys all have phones, right? Okay. I don't know if you know or not, but just beyond just the location of where you are, I think everybody knows that. We know at a network level where you are at any given time. Even if you don't have your phone, or not using your phone to just browse emails or anything like that, right? We still know where you are because your phone is pinging the network, right? Just to maintain connectivity. We also know, by the way, what websites you went to, what apps you used, okay? How long you were connected to that, what searches you did, everything, just through the network. Nothing prodding onto your cell phone or anything like that. Okay? It's a lot of information. Right? So we've been able to take that information with some of the other information that we have and create this Palomar market insight tool, which is positioned towards advertising agencies. Okay? So the whole objective of this is that, let's say if you wanted to go into business with against Home Depot. Everybody knows where Home Depot is. Okay, great. So today, how would you decide where to put your stores, where to advertise, and all that other stuff, right? You have to do a lot of work to be able to do that. With this tool, you can actually go in there and you can put in that I want to go and figure out what HomeDepot.com, right, Lowe's.com, right, all the competitors, and it'll tell you the demographics of all of the individuals that have used their cell phones to look up Home Depot, Lowe's, and all that. So now you'll get an idea that, hey, look, in Los Angeles, in this particular area, the demographic market base there is males ages 20 to 30 with this level of income, right? And this is the amount of time that they're in that location. So now you can actually very quickly get your product, right, or your strategy implemented to be able to do that. Here, taking a look at this as well, let me back up a little bit. So that's one of the nice things about my job. I've had a lot of different positions in different companies and run business units and all that. And just about 3 or 4 months ago, one of my leadership team asked me, he said, man, you seem kind of excited. What's so nice about this job? And I said, you know what? The nice thing about this job is I've never been in a position where I can take the same piece of data and I can sell it 10, 20 times and make money. And they were like, wow, right? As I explained that. All that. So as a result, when we're taking a look at this, there is applications we're looking at where we can take that data set to further augment a lot of the platforms and capabilities and solutions that we're introducing in the marketplace to allow further insights and value back to those customers to provide those particular platforms. Okay. Verizon Sheriff application. So this is again a big data analytic type of opportunity. So healthcare, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but in healthcare, one of the big problems is that doctors' offices and care providers submit all these claims into Medicaid. And a lot of them, or some of them I should say, have fraudulent information so that they can get paid on it. So the only way previously that you could actually take a look at this is if somebody, you have physical staff that would scan through these requests and figure out if this was a fraudulent claim or not, and then argue back and forth. So we actually took that problem and figured out a solution using data analytics to help eliminate about $650 million worth of cost of it by spotting those fraudulent claims. Second one is, in driverless cars, right? Now, most of these cars nowadays are connected as well, right? So the issue there is this whole thing about people hacking into the car so they can take control of that car. They can do a lot of damage, right? So our network actually has been enhanced with this capability where we're proactively identifying those exposures or vulnerabilities and stopping them so they cannot take control. And then the last one was voice network abuse. So have you noticed that those people from these different countries calling you saying that this is the IRS and you owe $50,000 and all that? Those number of calls have significantly dropped. Right? That's because products have been launched with Verizon. Okay, we do. Okay, this is another one. This is related more to the IoT world. So have you guys ever seen the smart Coke dispensing machines? That where you can add your flavors, lime, and all that kind of stuff? Okay, great. So that's what we call a complex machine because it has some significant number of components in it. So in there is a communication module that communicates with the network. There's another cache module that monitors the cache box to see whether that's full or not. There's another compressor module that monitors the compressor, right, and the functioning of the refrigeration system, and so on and so on and so on. So what we've done is using the data set from those machines, just in the communication network, we can actually tell you which components on those particular machines are not performing properly, and that can be a potentially breakdown. So we have that capability, and we're building that out to actually go after other complex machines like welders and gateways and things like that as well. So these are all things that customers will pay you money for. There's this, they have high levels of security on them. They're supportable, and all those other things that I talked about. Irrigation management. I don't know how many people drink wine. Okay. So have you ever thought about it? I know there was a big trend a little while back where CEOs that were getting fired during the downturn, they went and they actually bought wineries, right? And started making wine. Big trend in California and some other parts of the country. So in a typical winery, right, the revenue is about $200K. So if you said to invest in a winery, you get revenue of $200K when you sell the grapes or convert that into wine, whatever. Okay, your cost structure is about $120K. Okay. Your margin, right, is very small. Okay. So everybody thought it was lucrative and everything else. The problem with that is that it requires a heavy capital investment because you've got to plant the vines and all that kind of stuff. You got to water them. You only got one shot at harvesting that grape at the quality and the volume level that you wanted. Okay. If anything happened, disease, right, whatever, you're up the creek here. So one of the important things in that business is that you got to make sure that those particular plants have the right amount of moisture, right? And the stress level is within a certain band, literally. And that band can vary depending upon the time of the year, the type of crop that you're growing, the soil conditions, and all that other stuff. So Verizon introduced a solution called AgTech irrigation management. And what it does is it actually monitors through lots of different parameters it monitors your blocks, right, where you're growing the product, and it tells you, right, that you need to water 50 gallons or whatever you need to do over this period of time in order to get right back to this right stress levels, you get perfect grade and quality of the product basically. Okay. So that's where we're, an example where we're using data analytics to actually help with that particular industry. Now that product is going to get expanded into other areas where high value crops such as almonds, strawberries, etc. So I think that's pretty well it. Oh, one more, okay. Intelligent hospital, somebody talked about this as well. So this is something my team is right now working on. We're going to launch that this year. So I don't know how much you guys know about hospitals and all that, but in the United States, there's a massive shortage of nurses. They can't get enough of these nurses. About 48% of the time that the nurses spend in the hospital is not with the patient. So huge numbers. So given all of those dynamics, right, we're actually putting together a solution that has some tracking technologies with the nurses that initially will give you descriptive type of analytics that will show you, the patterns of transit that nurses have used, the locations where they've been, any congestion points. So now the administration of the hospital can actually go and act on that to optimize that behavior of the nurse of that hospital. So this is coming, you should be hearing a lot about this shortly, targeting I think September 26th for the launch of this product. I think that's pretty well it. Any questions?
You mentioned in a couple of previous slides about the Palomar software.
Yes.
Or the thing. You mentioned that you capture the information from all the users using Verizon network, right? But there's I understood that Verizon is one of the biggest telecom providers out there. But there's another side to it too, right? Like AT&T is another giant. So they have the same kind of information. So the software I'm trying to understand is the Palomar software. How does it tell the complete picture? Because you have your data sets, and the customers are using all the different networks. They could have a different kind of data sets.
Yeah. So right now, Palomar, the data ingestion is coming from the Verizon network only. So it's the Verizon subscribers. So the assumption is that Verizon customer base is kind of proportional or similar to the AT&T one and some of these other ones. Okay. Later on, what we're going to do is we're actually augmenting that capability to ingest data from different sources. So for example, let's say I wanted to know your location today, right? Okay, great. So cell phone is one piece of data, right? But you may have taken your car from home to here, which has a home device on there, for example, right? Okay, you may have activated your laptop and connected into the Wi-Fi network to school here, which we may have to access to that data set. So we can run those types of correlation algorithms to say, okay, what's the probability that he's actually here at this campus, or we can do that. We can do that with other data sets. Well, that's what makes Verizon really, really good, because it's such a big company. We can go talk to a lot of other companies, right, and get them established as a partnership model. In fact, one of the initiatives I was just talking to my boss about the workflow that I mentioned before. I told him, I said, look, I don't think that there's anybody in Verizon that understands this really well. And he said, don't worry about that. If the opportunity is there, figure out a company that we can go and buy. What? Okay. Right? So that's the mindset at Verizon. If we want to invest in something, we'll buy the company if we need to do that. Yeah, question.
So where do you do this analytics? Is this closer to your client location, or you do at a central facility?
So our strategy is to do it all in the Verizon infrastructure. So we have about 50 commercial grade data centers that we've acquired, plus other ones, right, that are not to that high level, okay, connected throughout the world. Okay, so we want to use that infrastructure because that meets all of the compliances requirements and the regulatory requirements that our customers have, as well as the regulatory agencies. So we use that as the mechanism.
Is that something closer to near real-time ingestion, or it's all batch?
Good question. So I just had this discussion with somebody else. So everybody talks, like when you hear some of these other guys talking about their platforms and their capability and all that, they'll all stress the real time. Yeah, we can do this really, really fast, right? The 85% of the use cases that we have in the applications, you don't need that real time, right? It's not even near real time, right? There's a lot of value there in those things, right? The ones that you get into where real time is absolutely critical are very few in, the target market is very small, and the risk is very high. So as an example, nuclear power plant, right? You know, there's only a limited amount of these things. You have to have the real-time capability to be able to understand that stuff and act on it. And if you screw it up, huge, huge liability, right? So do you really want to be in that business, right? Right now, my position is, as we go through our criteria, probably not, right? It just doesn't make sense. Plus, I may only have 10 guys that are selling to the companies that operate those nuclear power plants, right? Meanwhile, Verizon's got a sales force of 4,000 individuals, right? Plus another 1,000 or 2,000 sales engineers. I can't motivate all those other guys.
What's your ingestion, pipeline made of? What sort of technologies do you use?
I'm not the right guy to ask for that. Because people ask me a lot of questions about technology, and there's a lot of guys at Verizon, right outside in the industry, that are very, very knowledgeable. Like, I mean, I was impressed with that guy from Oracle, not the last one, the one previous to that. I was like, man, we should hire this guy. But the thing is that there's a lot of those guys. That's great, I can get those guys, right? There's no problem. I can buy out the company that they work for if I can't get them, right? The issue is that how do I make money at it?
Yeah, so probably IoT market is very fragmented right now. So how do you expect the market is going to consolidate in the next coming years, and what will be the role of Verizon and similar providers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So what you're seeing is that the guys that are having the fragmented type of solutions that are very specific, right? They work in the oil and gas industry, monitoring storage tanks, right? And all that, and they've got a back-end application that can manage that. They're trying to move up the stack. Verizon's over here, right? Trying to move down as well, okay? So there's a collision that's going to happen at some point in time. But the problem is, there's Verizon, AT&T, a couple of other guys that are big enough like that coming down this way, and there's thousands of these guys over here trying to come off this way, right? Yeah. I can tell you how that's going to play out.
Do you see a threat in this emerging technologies like Sigfox or LoRa, some alternative connectivity standards for IoT devices?
Yeah. Well, that's I've had a debate with one of my guys about that as well, right? So do you remember a technology called WiMAX?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of money invested because everybody thought they could be an infrastructure player, right? Cities and all that. Where's that today? Dead, right? One of the issues with cellular technology has been the cost structure of the modems. They're running about $45 right now. We've got various initiatives like the M-Class modem that's coming out, the M1, right, as well, that are going to bring it down to sub-$20 level, and then as the economies of scale kick in. So our objective is, that Fitbit that you wear, you don't even need Wi-Fi. Put a cellular modem in there, and we connect it directly to the network. Okay, the dog tag directly into the network. So if we can drive that cost point down, where you get integrated in, you don't have to worry about it. Then you get all the benefits associated with that, the security, right, the convenience and everything else.
So I have a question. So you mentioned like 140 million people in your network. Probably you know exactly where they are. But Google, which everybody across AT&T, Verizon, tablets, and everywhere they're using search engine, they know more than you search. So how do you compete with Google, which now you have this metrics of saying, hey, I'll only do if I make this much money. Google doesn't care.
Yeah.
They just go and do it.
Yeah. So that strategy. So there's a thing called OATH.
Yeah.
Now that Verizon has, right? So that's leveraging the Yahoo and AOL customers, right?
Yeah.
Now you're going to get more and more data sets, right, and penetration in the marketplace. The other thing is that Google is not an infrastructure player, right? They rely on other people's infrastructure for the Google Maps, right? Email and all that other stuff. So my team is actually responsible for that, or helping to drive that. Is we're working on a thing called Bullseye, and Bullseye actually, let me step back. GPS today, from a location perspective, GPS published standards is 6.8 meters, right? So when you do Google Maps and all that, 6.8 meters worth of accuracy. If you have a really, really good receiver, like the ones that Trimble uses, right, and some of the other advanced devices, you can get down to 1 meter. Okay. Bullseye technology, right, is an augmentation technology that does correction based on the curvature of the Earth, where your located device is, how cloudy it is, and all that other stuff. Can get you down to 1 to 2 centimeters worth of accuracy. Right? So the intent is that if we can utilize that to go after the enterprise customers which are willing to pay for this accuracy, right, and the solutions associated with that, all of a sudden Google is now back into the non-paying consumer, right, where it's cool technology or whatever. So that's one of the ways that we can actually go after that. You know, another way, we were talking about this before, right? Google Maps. So people have asked me another question about how do we compete against Google Maps. I've got Google Maps on my phone, I've got Waze, I've got Verizon Navigator. I don't use those other ones, right? So Google Maps right now does the optimization based on time and distance, right? Okay. Now, what happens, as one of the gentlemen back there was saying, he lives in an area where there's a lot of crime, right, in the city and all that. If you're worried about your family, right, Google may put you through some very shady areas. I mean, it did that to me in New York. Right? I was driving through Harlem and this is about 11 o'clock at night, trying to find a gas station. I was like, holy cow, this is not where I want to be. So having the ability to have these other data sets, be able to ingest it to provide a value proposition back to that end user is how you compete against guys like Google. But they'll never be able to get that data set or that capability in-house.
Any other questions, guys?
Can you talk about endpoints at all? Like, do you see Bluetooth displacing some RFID, Bluetooth low energy?
Yeah, I mean, like, those are viable technologies right now that they have, and that the only reason that they're being adopted is because, again, as I mentioned, it's a cost point, right? It's a little bit cheaper than cellular, right, et cetera. But the plan that we have on the product roadmap in terms of the modules and the modems that we're coming out with, they're going to be very competitive to those things, right? And squash them.
So like a Bluetooth low energy, like $30?
Yeah. Right. I'm talking modules, like the Class M modules. The last projections I saw were somewhere sub $10. Sub $10, the Class M modules.
Awesome.
So these are machine-to-machine modules that have low bandwidth, like you can't transmit megabytes of data, right? Transmit low megabytes of data, and they're very low power. So they can last for 2 years. In fact, one of the guys one of my colleagues is introducing a tag device, which you can put cellular based, put it onto a backpack, purse, whatever else, right? And it can last you 2 years, disposable. That's using the Class M modules.
So you would sell the hardware and we make a monthly subscription or something?
Oh, for us?
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, so Verizon's business, right, is like the model in a lot of companies is changing. Where it used to be, I'm going to sell your device and make some money off it, and then I'm going to do the subscription later on, or make a little bit of money. It's really changing, right? The device is still a Gillette story, right, kind of thing. And it's give you the razor, right? We'll charge you on the blades. So that subscription for Verizon of the $45 or $50 ARPU per month is much, much more profitable if I give you the device as compared to charging you for the device and dropping that ARPU. Right? Plus, I have the option, because you are on the plan after 18 months or 19 months, of upselling you to the next device, the next plan, right, as well. So the whole industry is kind of changing, right? The business model is changing towards that. So Verizon, when we come out, it's really the device is going to be agnostic. I don't really care. As long as it's met our requirements, right, that can connect to the network and to the back-end applications, the data sets and all that kind of stuff, great. Go buy it wherever you want. Right? And we'll focus on the other aspects. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the intelligent hospital and the healthcare fraud that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So will the hospital itself be your customer? Do you partner with their analytics team at a hospital? Do you provide services, or do you provide mainly the technology solution?
No, we provide, the whole intent is not for the hospital hospital not to have analytic people on staff.
Gotcha.
Okay? So they come to us to buy the solution end-to-end, right? The turnkey type of solution. So in this particular case, the hospital administrator can look in the portal and see how the nurses are behaving and get recommendations in terms of some of the things that they can do. The other aspect of the hospital that we're working on is called cold chain. So pharmaceutical drugs, I don't know if you guys know about this or not, but you know, when the doctor prescribes you drugs, you go to the pharmacy, fill that. On the average though, only 50%. The drugs that you get are about 50% efficacy level because they haven't been transported properly, they haven't been stored properly and all that. So you're not getting the full impact of the drug that you just bought. A huge problem in the industry. So we have a problem. We have a product called Cold Chain, which has already been launched last year. I think fourth quarter got launched. But that tracks those types of shipments from the point where it's manufactured all the way to the hospitals or the pharmacy or whatever, and you can see exactly what the efficacy level of those things are. So the Verizon's objective is we'll hire the data analytic guys, we'll hire the infrastructure guys, put the solutions together in an end-to-end manner, and then offer it to our customers so they don't have to do all that work. But one of the problems that we realized, and I realized this in the oil and gas industry when I was working and managing some of their accounts, was when the customer, like I had ConocoPhillips, a big company,
Right.
lots of money, right? They would hire these guys, right, to kind of be network engineers so they could kludge these solutions together. And guess what happened? Almost every time there's problems. And then we got involved to fix those problems. So we're like, in a way to take that away from them. You know, you don't have to worry about it. That's not your core competency. We'll do it ourselves. If we've thought it through an end-to-end perspective, we're just going to offer that to you as a service.
We take one more question. Does Verizon, AT&T, and other IMT providers have the built-out spectrum to sustain this sort of expansion into kind of cell tower frequency devices? And if not, will there be a push regulatory-wise for that expansion of spectrum?
Good, very good question. I can't answer for AT&T because their strategy is
I don't expect it.
different. But for Verizon, we're making a very heavy investment in 5G. Right? So 5G is supposed to be able to deliver ultra-high definition television type of content, broadcast content to your cell phone. Okay. Right? So as that network gets in place, the data sets required for some of these applications, whether it's intelligent hospital or the AgTech one, right? It's so minor. It doesn't really matter because that's what the 5G network is being aimed at, right? So we can do that. 5G also brings some other capabilities in terms of security, right? Vigilance and all that quality of service. So that's going to help us as well.
You already have that built spectrum, or?
We've already bought the spectrum. We're in the implementation phase. I think the 5G, when I last took a look at it, there was a demo truck that was in Basking Ridge about 3 or 4 months ago, and they showed me a tablet where I could launch an ultra-high definition program.
It was here about 2 months ago.
Was it? Okay, good, yeah. So they're rolling it out. It's going to be a controlled rollout because the investment required for that type of infrastructure is huge.
Yeah.
Right? So we're doing that slowly.
Great.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you.